Two's company, but not three. That's too much company.
Nailed it.
We are so excited to say that this podcast is sponsored by Sky TV, who are airing the very long-awaited Friends reunion.
Grace and I are massive fans of Friends. What's your favourite episode, Grace?
Oh, the one where they play American football and the girls flash the boys and then they win.
Of course.
What about you?
Smelly Cat.
Smelly cat, smelly... Okay.
The Friends reunion TV special will air on demand from 8:02 a.m. and on Sky One at 8 p.m. on Thursday, the 27th of May.
And that is tomorrow if you're listening to this podcast like a good subscriber on Wednesday.
Grace, I expect you to be on my sofa with a bowl of popcorn at 7:59 p.m. sharp tomorrow evening.
Coming!
So Thursday, 8 p.m, 27th of May, be there.
Thank you so much to Sky TV.
Thank you, Sky TV. Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Two's Company, a fortnightly podcast hosted by me, Sophie Hellyer.
And me, Grace Kingswell.
In today's episode, we're discussing Davina McCalls' new documentary, Sex, Myths and the Menopause, the size of Prince William's guns, what's been happening in the news this week, and we'll also be bringing you a satisfying dose of 90s nostalgia.
I think we need to clarify guns, you mean muscles? When you first said that, I was like, hold on.
Oh yeah, muscles.
And we obviously haven't forgot our regular segments of vagina facts, things we disagree on, and the mailbag.
And just a little...
Shameless plug.
Please. If you're enjoying this show, please do share it with your friends, share it in your Instagram stories, like and review us. It all really helps us do well in the charts.
Yeah,
and all
it's
that
basically really hard to make a podcast be heard by thousands and thousands of people. And although we are stoked with our progress so far, aren't we, Soph?
Yeah.
We really do want you to share this podcast with people that you think would enjoy it. So thanks in advance.
Thanks. So, band meeting?
Sophie?
Present. Grace?
Present.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
How's your week been, Grace? We haven't really caught up.
No. It's been fine, you know. Can't really... The weather's been, I think, getting everyone down, and it's been massively depressing, just being rained on. All my seeds... So I planted out my seedlings, I think, maybe a little bit too early into my vegetable garden. But in my head, I was like, it's fine. Cornwall has a microclimate. It's really warm down here. They'll be all right. Completely forgetting about the 45 miles per hour winds that we get. And they've all been blown over and the stalks have broken. So that's been really upsetting. But apart from that, just working hard, you know.
Also, do you want to tell the listeners why you're a little bit tired today?
Well, I'm always tired, though. What's the reason that
It's just like the time of the month. But it is.
Yeah, I just feel fed up with the world today. I'm due my period at the weekend and I just genuinely could not give a shit about life.
Grace is playing the grouchy character today. I'll try and be the happy one.
I was like, can Sophie just do the podcast? I'll just sit here and listen. No, but yeah, I'm all right. Just a bit fed up. How about you?
Yeah, I've had a good week. Had some interesting moments with the puppy. I did text you one morning to tell you about the Punami.
Oh, that sounded absolutely horrific.
Young puppy stood in her own... she had a bad tummy. She stood in it. She ran it all over the house.
To begin with, I thought you meant that you'd stood in the poo and then walked all out over the house.
I don't walk on my bed. She walked on my bed. Anyway, thank God for the steam mop. Came into its own. And also
what did you do with the sheets, though? Just straight in the washing machine?
Wash.
60 degrees.
Yeah.
Oh.
And also on the beach, this would have been funny if it was anybody else's dog, but because it was my dog, it wasn't that funny. There was about 6 little children in their shorty wetsuits playing on the beach, running around, and Puppy decided to start chasing them. Cue 6 children running around, screaming, crying in tears with like dog as big as them chasing them round.
So embarrassing for you.
So embarrassing. One kid's just stood in like ankle depth water in the stream, screaming his eyes out. And the others are...
Where are the parents at this point?
Well, luckily the parents also thought it was funny and were laughing. But because the kids were running around, flapping their arms, the dog just thought it was a game and was like, woo! Chasing them around.
No.
And then while this was all kicking off, the lifeguard then kicked in with a... just to let you know, there is a dog ban on this beach.
Oh, no.
Which we weren't aware of. So we melted with embarrassment and got in the car and drove home.
The awkward thing about your puppy is that she looks like a fully grown cockapoo type thing.
Yeah, she's quite big for a puppy.
But she's actually only 3 months old and hasn't learnt stop, sit, come yet. So, yeah, how embarrassing.
Yeah. So, what's been happening in the news?
In the news, well, we've had some very weighty things and some super fun, frivolous things like Eurovision, which I can't wait to talk about. Firstly, though, a ceasefire has been agreed between Israel and the Palestinian militant Hamas. And this comes after 11 days of fighting where at least 240 people have been killed. And most of those deaths have been Palestinians in the territory of Gaza. And I did a little bit of reading around this and, was just interested to find out that although this latest violence follows just a month of kind of rising tensions in Jerusalem, the fighting's actually gone on for about 100 years. So it's quite a... Yeah. And it all started when the British took over the area known as Palestine after World War One. And so, yeah, essentially it all comes back to us.
Great.
I know. But that's a brief roundup. I could go on, but we're just doing a quick fire, aren't we?
Pretty heavy situation over there. In some other slightly political news, but less weighty. Have you seen the new Green at Peace plastic film?
Yes, I loved it.
I loved it too. It's basically taking a jab at the UK government. It's a little animation and it's got Boris outside number 10 claiming that the UK is proud to be a global leader in tackling plastic pollution.
That was such a good impression.
Thanks. And then it just starts raining plastic bottles and he's swept along Westminster in a wave of plastic. And it's basically to show that plastic is meant to represent the 1.8 million kilograms of plastic that the UK dumps in other countries every single day, which obviously has a devastating effect on people and wildlife. And I think a lot of that plastic isn't even being recycled. It's just being dumped and burned overseas. So, yeah, I thought it was a great little video and recommend watching it if you haven't seen it.
And it's a... I was going to say economic, but it's a kind of money orientated thing as well, isn't it? Because we pay these third world countries to take our plastic. So for them, it's like, we really need the money. We'll take this and then we'll just burn it because we don't know what to do with it. And it's just this horrible...
I actually think, just circling back to last episode, I actually think that Hugh Fenley-Whittingstall's plastic documentary covered that, because at the time we used to send it all out to China and now China stopped taking it and now it's going to...
And that was the first time that I really became aware of this problem, that we actually don't deal with our own plastic waste. So thanks, Hugh.
In more light news that Grace has been dying to tell me all about.
I know. So I don't know how many of you watched Eurovision. I don't know why I love Eurovision so much, but Tiggy, who was a guest speaker on episode 1, I think, when we spoke about tights, my oldest school friend and I both just love Eurovision, and we used to watch it together every year. So Nick and I had a very fun-filled Saturday evening watching it, and it was a really good year. You know, some very fantastic performances. Sadly for the UK, nil point.
Nil point. I heard that Amanda Holden was slightly contributed to that with her not knowing how to say good evening in French.
I know. She said something like good evening in French, and then she said it in German or another language, Dutch, sorry. But then she made a really crass comment of, but I don't even know which one's which, because she was obviously just reading it from her teleprompter and had practiced the pronunciation. Not really the way to go about, being a good kind of diplomatic TV presenter. But I felt really sorry for the UK performer, James Newman, who is a very highly regarded songwriter in the UK. He's collaborated with Ed Sheeran and Rudimental, and won numerous awards. But I feel like, and actually I think the song was really good, and when you hear it on the radio, it sounds great and it's really catchy. It's got a great hook and a great chorus. But the Eurovision stage, you won't know because you didn't watch it, is immense. It is so big, and I think when you're performing in a space that is that big, the backing track needs to also be huge. And it kind of felt like his song just fell flat a little bit, and typically you hear the main vocal is stacked and layered multiple times to make it sound really, really big. And also, he was a little bit flat, which was so awful. He missed some of the notes, and no one else missed their notes the whole evening. So although I think often the Eurovision is very political, I think this year actually we were just the worst. That's really sad. But Italy won with a rock song, and the lead singer was wearing, for want of a better word, lederhosen.
Oh,
I know. And they were like very high-waisted, very tight flared trousers, and he was wearing like a platform boot.
that's not an Italian dress. Isn't that more of a Dutch or a German thing?
Well, he'd done it in like a sort of rock and roll way because he was completely bare-chested and like tattooed and makeup and black nails and stuff. Okay. But I like that song won because it was a proper song with a verse and a chorus, and it was quite tuneful despite being very rocky. I could go on, but I won't.
Can I just say, this is like absolute torture. I have a cup of tea next to me that I don't want to drink because I don't want to make a slurpy noise, and I just keep staring at my cup of tea. Like,
okay, tea break. Take a sip. I'll keep talking about Eurovision. No, I won't. But we are going to move on.
So meanwhile, while the Eurovision was happening, also I love that Grace just texted me and said, "Did you watch Eurovision?" I imagine the answer is no.
Yes, and the next point on our discussion list is something that I, again, as last week, have no idea what it means. And apparently the reason I don't know what it is because I was watching Eurovision.
Yeah, so meanwhile, while Eurovision was happening, Glastonbury had a bit of a shambles.
The place.
The festival. So Glastonbury Festival had been doing a live stream event where they got all the musicians like Coldplay and Haim and George Ezra at Glastonbury on the stages.
On the same night as Eurovision?
I believe it was.
Shooting themselves in the foot, surely.
I don't keep up with TV that much, but that was going on. And you had to pay £20 for a ticket, and I think it was all going to raise money for their biggest charities like Oxfam and Greenpeace. But they had a bit of a technical issue and the link didn't work and no one could access it.
Oh, wow.
So all these bands played these live gigs at Glastonbury
and
nobody saw.
How terrible.
Yeah.
God, I bet there was absolute uproar. Do you have anything to add on that, Nick Kingswell, being the actual musician in the room? Okay, no thoughts from Nick.
No thoughts.
On to, again, less pop culture and more, news.
We love a bit of royal news on this podcast, don't we?
We do. Well, there's been a lot to cover, hasn't there? So this just turns a page. Also, just on a side note, I always thought in my head that it's very unprofessional to let the sound of your rustling notes appear on your podcast or your broadcast. But when you listen to the radio, do you ever listen to Zoe Ball Breakfast Show on BBC Radio 2 in the morning?
No, but on Women's Hour, you often hear a rustle of a notepad.
Yeah, and actually, I think that Zoe Ball does it kind of almost on purpose. It's like her, it's like a little crutch that she has to lean on, in moments of, what's coming next? It's like, let's rustle the notes. So
I also think it's showing our age because we have notes on paper as opposed to digital on our phone computer notes.
Yeah,
because we are of a certain age.
I'd have to scroll a lot with my finger off as on my phone screen. So anyway, this is the news story that an independent inquiry by Lord Dyson, who is a former senior judge, found journalist Martin Bashir to have used deception as a means of securing a very famous interview with Princess Diana. And this interview was broadcast in 1995. It was a huge scoop for the BBC, as never before had a serving royal spoken in such candid terms about life in the royal family or their relationship with other royals. And in the interview, Princess Diana admitted to having an affair. She said Prince Charles's affair with Camilla Parker Bowles had made her feel worthless. She spoke of there being 3 of us in the marriage. She talked about her bulimia and self-harming. And essentially it was just a massive, massive deal. More than 20 million people watched the interview. And the report by Lord Dyson has, said basically that he used deception to secure the interview, as he showed Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, forged bank statements appearing to show payments by a newspaper group to a former member of his staff. And Bashir has admitted to having these bank statements mocked up by a graphic artist working at the BBC at the time. But it's just basically caused this massive thing. And I can't call them Prince William and Prince Harry anymore, can I? Because it's the Duke of Cambridge.
I just call him Will.
Okay, so William. All right, Wills. So the Duke of Cambridge has issued an extraordinary public statement, which is a really scathing critique of the deceitful behaviour of the BBC employees and the woeful incompetence of this national institution. So this is all, happening in the news, basically. All you need to do is Google Martin Bashir, who actually was on Strictly Come Dancing, I've just remembered, a few years ago. How bizarre. I don't think he did very well. He's a terrible dancer. But it's all kicking off. Any thoughts?
Yeah, there was one tweet I saw that kind of rounded up my thoughts quite well, and it just said it's Dr. I'm not sure I pronounced this name right, Dr. Scholar. Prince William is justifiably angry at the BBC and Martin Bashir, as we are, but to discredit his mother's evidence of her lived experience as paranoia, fueled fears, self-inflicted isolation, shows a total lack of empathy to Princess Diana. He undermines her courage and truth.
Yeah.
And I kind of get that. I know he's really angry, but I
what
think
she said was true.
It's taking away her agency. And, her and Charles had been living separately for 3 years then and had already admitted to having multiple affairs. She'd already told her life story to the guy who did her autobiography.
Yeah.
I think that William's anger it's kind of ignoring that she was an independent woman with agency who decided to do that and was happy with her decision.
Yeah, and William has said that he wants the whole thing, struck from the record. And although I know you hate Camilla Long, and actually she is our things we disagree on.
We'll come back to her.
She did write a really interesting piece about this in which she said, the language that the Duke of Cambridge used was kind of almost, maybe she's taking it too far, but a bit like a dictatorship saying, we can't just strike off news. You can't just delete stuff from history. And you're so right. For Diana for a royal in that decade to speak out about something like mental health, which was just not done, is such an important moment. And I think I agree with you and whoever wrote that tweet that you cannot just delete her agency and the way she felt about the situation.
I don't. You haven't watched The Crown, have you?
Yes.
Okay, good. So it reminds me of. Do you remember in The Crown, which also happened in real royal history, when I think it was in the 50s, where they made a documentary all about the royal family. Mm-hmm. It aired once, and then the royal family decided they hated it, and they deleted it, and it was never aired ever again. Yeah. It's like Will's trying to do that again. He's trying to get this interview offline to never be aired again.
Yeah. And actually, Prince William's reaction was totally different, wasn't it? He was quite kind of, let's let sleeping dogs lie kind of thing. So,
Prince William has been in the news for other reasons this week. Did you see the photo that went viral of his biceps?
No, but when I was scanning through our show notes, I noticed, wait, let me find, oh no, it's not here. It was a link just saying Prince William's biceps and then, a URL, and I clicked on it because I was so intrigued.
Yes, listener, you can see that photo if you click the link in the show notes. Basically, Kensington Palace released a photo of him getting his COVID jab. And right there, dominating the otherwise predictable shot, was one very buff arm. And social media had a deliciously lascivious field day about Prince Will's, how buff he was,
well,
basically.
None of us have had that much to do in lockdown. He's obviously been pumping some iron and working out.
So what got what's the phrase? Goat up? It's like the scruff up. What got
your goat up?
Is that
Nick's
nodding? What got my goat up? It's a weird
Isn't
expression.
That a weird expression? Are we sure that's correct? Fact check this. Your heckles.
Yes,
sorry.
The photo of Prince Will was then heavily compared with the photo of Prince Harry that I think ran on the front of the Times, which was a photo from his new mental health docuseries, The Me You Can't See. And it was a photo of him undergoing EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy.
Type of therapy.
Some of my friends have had it, said it's amazing. Anyway, he's having this therapy to treat unresolved anxiety around the death of his mother. I just think there is a really big contrast between these two photos, and they're dominated the press this week. But I just hate this rhetoric that everyone's saying Harry is weak because he's admitted he's suffering and having therapy, and Will is suddenly fit to lead the country because he's got big biceps. I'm like, for me, it's the complete other way around. Harry having therapy and it's really progressive that he's talking about that stuff and admitting it, and Will trying to banish something from TV and having big guns does not mean that he's going to be a great leader.
But do you not? I do agree with that, but just because we like to argue on this podcast, do you not think that also one thing that William must be so aware of is that he will be king and Harry won't, and that is huge in terms of the way that he has got to conduct himself in the media, the way that he has got to present a view to the global population. I mean, he might want to go off and do all these things and have all this therapy. He might be having that behind closed doors, but I think maybe for him, he's, slightly older and just feels this massive sense of duty and that he's on a bound to be very stoic and I don't know. Yeah,
maybe, but I also think he probably has the agency and the power to do things differently. You know, what watchers of The Crown will know that our Queen Lizzie came in and did things a bit differently and shook it up a little bit. And I think now, many years down the line, he could totally come in and shake things up a bit, and it wouldn't be terrible if he admitted he was also having therapy.
But I guess it's, you know, it's a personal, what do you feel comfortable with? And if he doesn't feel comfortable with that, and the fact that he is going to live his whole life in the public eye, then he should be allowed to deal with his grief and his trauma in a way that feels comfortable to him, i.e. pumping iron in the gym.
Indeed. Should we move on with the podcast?
Yeah. This week, actually, yesterday, I watched Davina McCalls. Would you call this a documentary? What is the definition of a documentary? It's a programme on TV that Davina McCall made called Sex, Myths and the Menopause. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's about Davina's personal menopause story. And it busts many a midlife taboo, from sex to HRT, which stands for hormone replacement therapy, which is one of the ways that menopausal women can gain relief from their symptoms.
Yeah, we did discuss whether to put this in the podcast because, you know, our listener base is generally a little bit younger, I think, than menopausal age.
Had a lot of DMs from people saying, can't wait to hear about you guys talk about this.
I was about to say, however, after listening to a podcast with Maisie Hill yesterday, who I'll talk about later, but perimenopause starts in your late 30s. I'm really not that far away from it. And of course, some people have early menopause, and there was one woman in the show it happened to at 12 years old. That was shocking. You know, 51% of the population are going to go through menopause. So I think we kind of owe it to people with wombs and vaginas to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an immensely complicated subject. And actually, one thing that came up from that documentary is not how little we know about it, but, well, actually maybe how little we know about it. Because, you know, multiple times they said if this was a man's problem, we would have dealt with it by now. And actually just look at how commercialized and accessible something like Viagra has become, whereas HRT is still shrouded in fear and misinformation, essentially.
Before this program, I will admit, I knew next to nothing about the menopause other than hot flushes. And I would actually say I've kind of actively avoided learning about it. I've just sort of had this thing that, like, I don't have to deal with it yet. I didn't need to know about it, which I now realise was quite naive. I'm assuming that, Grace, you come from a bit of a place with a bit more knowledge due to your work.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a few women on my books who are either undergoing HRT. A few of them have estrogen patches, and I have a few menopausal and post-menopausal women. But it's not. I mean, it is, like I was saying before, it's an immensely complicated area. It's not like. You know, I feel much more comfortable helping people with their gut health or their hormones in their menstruating years. And I think, as we were saying, part of that is because I think once I've been through it myself, I will have such a greater understanding of it.
Same reason I don't teach pregnancy yoga yet.
Yeah. And also, you know, the literature is confusing. The medical studies are far and few between with regards to things like HRT. But so 1942 was when the first HRT panacea was given. And then in 2002 was this study that Davina was talking about called the Women's Health Initiative, which radically changed hormone prescription. And HRT use declined by 80% at that stage because it basically drew a connection between HRT and breast cancer.
Yeah, so it said basically overnight, almost 50% of people came off HRT. Yeah. But 5 years later, this study was basically debunked.
Well, it's now basically being reviewed. And
well, I think it's almost been totally discredited in that study was done on women who were 12 years past the menopause in their 70s. And then it was applied to women of all ages, so women in their 40s and 50s. And actually, it's been shown now that, like, estrogen-only therapy can lower your risk of breast cancer. But that misinformation and all of the, you know, people say HRT and people think breast cancer, whereas that isn't the truth at all.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the introduction of bioidentical hormones. So these days with HRT, we are using hormones which are, clues in the name, exactly identical to the ones that the human body produces itself. And that that in itself is very helpful because the body then recognizes that hormone, knows how to break it down, which pathways to push it down to be detoxified, etc. And the risks, of which there are still some, differ depending on the type, dose and duration of use. The route of administration, like via the skin, is a lot safer. The timing and whether they use also progesterone as well as just estrogen. So for me as a practitioner, the goal is always to maximize the benefits and minimize the risks, because I think if I was considering it myself, I would want to know, I would run a few tests and I would want to know which pathways my body pushes estrogen down. And actually, I personally already know this. I've done a Dutch hormone panel, and my body does have a propensity to push my estrogen down quite a problematic pathway. And the thing with estrogen is it's a proliferative hormone. It builds things, and that's why it has this big connection with cancer, because it's a proliferation of cells, essentially. And if you do have a genetic tendency to deal with your estrogen in one specific way, then yes, your risks might actually be higher than the next person's. But I think what the documentary basically showed is that it's something that we should all consider. And fundamentally, if the menopause and the perimenopause is ruining your life, like it does for so many women, we should hopefully be able to gain access to some sort of treatment that helps us at that stage.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I've spoken to a couple of menopause experts prior to this, and from what they've said to me, the risks do not outweigh the benefits.
Yeah.
Like the benefits are and I've written down the actual stats from the program. So it says from women aged 50 to 59, 23 out of 1,000 will get breast cancer regardless of lifestyle factors. There'll be 5 extra cases of breast cancer for those who drink 2 units of alcohol a week. And there'll be 24 extra cases for women who are obese. If you're a healthy woman taking hormone replacement therapy, you have a 4 in 1,000 chance of breast cancer. So
Yeah,
it's
I wrote
really
that down too.
it's really not a huge jump. Like you're more likely to get breast cancer from drinking a glass of wine every week than you are from taking HRT. And, you know, without being on HRT, there's increased chances of heart disease and osteoporosis, diabetes, and even dementia. And I thought the bit on dementia on the show was really interesting. Dementia and Alzheimer's is the #1 killer of women in the UK, and they literally showed a scan of how a lack of estrogen affects the brain. So when people say like, oh, I've got brain fog, or I feel like I'm going crazy, this is actually like you see the brain change without oxygen, and it is like this is a contributor in dementia. Yeah, without, did I say with?
You said oxygen. Oh. The brain definitely changes without oxygen.
Without estrogen. So yeah, I found that really interesting, and just Davina's point in that show is like, why is there not more studies being done into the benefits of estrogen for dementia and Alzheimer's?
Well, it's also, I think, one of the key issues as well is that just in the same way that GPs and doctors have, I think, 7 hours of nutrition training across their, 8 or 9, whatever it is, years of training, they also have 0 hours of menopause training. And I don't get why that is, because it's just affecting. I have a really good statistic here.
Well, it said 2/3 of women were being offered antidepressants, so the GPs were really struggling to identify menopause. A lot of the symptoms like insomnia and joint pains and, feeling depressed are being mistaken for depression, whereas actually the NHS first line of recommended treatment is their HRT.
Yeah, it's like when you're a menstruating woman and you're having terrible mood swings and PMT and PMDD almost, and terrible periods. You go to your doctor and they just shove you on the pill, and it's kind of the same, isn't it? You're a menopausal woman, but they can't recognise those symptoms yet, so it's like, oh, here, just have some antidepressants.
Yeah, which isn't the right medication for most of the people. Okay, let's talk about vaginal atrophy as well, where the vaginal tissue becomes thin and less elastic, and the vagina becomes quite dry. But there's a really simple solution, just the estrogen pessary, but it's only available on prescription. And I also wrote down here, we love lube.
Yeah. Specifically, one brand called Yes, which is a really natural lubricant. And I think that is really important. That these days you go into the chemist, don't you? And you just see all these like brightly coloured bottles of chemically things. It's just like, stop it. I mean, we talk about this all the time in the podcast. Just like basically like what you should and shouldn't put up there. So
Yeah.
we don't probably need to go into that very much.
One final thing on the menopause program was I'm really happy she included a section on lifestyle and exercise, and it showed cold water swimming for menopause, which I know has been really beneficial to some people we know who are going through the menopause. And I also love that I learned another person in the House of Lords, because they included Baroness Sayeeda Varsi, who does strength training and I think cold water swimming. And I was just circling back to a previous episode where we discussed the House of Lords and how we know none of them. I now know one more. She's the youngest Baroness.
Quite a niche trainer selection from her in that little cutaway when they showed her in the gym. I just thought her trainers were quite interesting.
I recently saw something on the internet saying that reflecting on the 90s now is the same as people in the 90s reflecting on the 60s, which made me feel very old.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you keep saying to me in capitals with lots of emojis on the show notes, but Grace, you don't even remember the 90s. You're too young.
Well,
and
that's my question. Grace, do you remember the 90s?
Well, I was born in 91, so I guess I don't remember it that well. And actually, when you said, "Oh, what's your favourite TV show? What's your favourite this, that, and the other?" most of the things that I named were from the 2000s. But I do have some. I also love here that we've just written, most of the 90s was just wondering if Ross and Rachel would get back together. On that note, the day after this podcast airs, the whole Friends cast is getting back together for the Friends reunion. I don't know what channel that's being aired on. Do you?
I don't know the answer.
Okay.
Hey Sophie, this is Sophie from the future. You obviously weren't listening to the ad at the start because the Friends reunion will be on Sky TV, Sky 1, 8 p.m, Thursday the 27th of May.
It looks great. The trailer is all over social media. They've all had fantastic amounts of plastic surgery. And I think Jennifer Aniston is maybe the only one that looks quite normal.
I think it's interesting how the three guys have very evidently aged, as is normal, but the three women basically look the same.
But it looks like David Schwimmer's had some work done.
Well, I think they probably all have done some work done. There has been a lot of retroactive criticism of Friends, hasn't there, with it being quite problematic. And I actually looked, Grace said to me, "What's your favourite Friends episode?" And I have to admit that although I've watched a lot of Friends and I find it quite relaxing to sit down and it be on the TV, I didn't ever obsessively watch it from start to finish, and I don't think I've ever even seen the last episode.
Oh my
But
gosh.
I looked back, you said, "What's your favourite?" And I looked back and I was like, oh my gosh, they are. There's a lot of like sexist, transphobic, homophobic.
Come on. It's fine. I mean, I get that. But like this whole cancel culture and the whole like, oh, we can't watch this anymore. We can't watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer anymore because I can't remember which actor was in it, was done for sexual assault or whatever. I think sometimes you just have to accept that everything has its time and its place. And if you're going to watch Friends now, you watch it with a little pinch of salt, you know?
Yeah, I do agree. And I think that although Friends, was quite problematic and, putting Courtney Cox in a fat suit for laughs was like lazy and offensive. But we have to remember the show aired in like 1994 and finished in 2004. And I don't think it was any more problematic than any other pop culture show at the time. And actually, in many ways, Friends was quite progressive. There was like Phoebe being a surrogate mother. There was Ross's ex in a lesbian relationship. There was one scene where they talked positively about same-sex adoption. I think actually, although Friends got a lot wrong, and if it was watching it back now, actually, if anything, I think that it's great to watch it back and think how far we've come. Like a lot of that stuff would never, ever make TV nowadays, which is a great thing for now.
Yeah, but it also probably wouldn't be as funny.
Ooh, I'd challenge that and say that we shouldn't put trans people and gay people at the butt of our jokes, and that you could still make funny TV without the jokes that they did.
That's definitely true. But like I was saying, I just think we also need to appreciate how much joy Friends brought and still does bring to basically the whole world, and it defined a whole era. And I think, Nick and I rewatched it from start to finish at the beginning of the first lockdown, and it was such a comfort to have that every evening and to kind of know what was coming and to know the jokes and like the characters. And yeah, I totally get that Courtney Cox, well, she's very funny dancing around in a fat suit, but I get that that isn't something that we would do these days. But again, I just think that when we watch something with that nostalgia, you have to just also take into account the cultural climate of the time, you know?
Yeah. And I agree somewhat, but also that
I mean, a show like Friends wouldn't work now.
no, it wouldn't work now. And when you say it, the whole world, I imagine Friends had a very white audience. I can't imagine lots of.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually really don't know about that because it was so. I think it transcended it certainly transcended all the generations. I wouldn't be surprised if it was watched by a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm interested because it came out on Netflix a couple of years ago, and so then like younger watchers have now found the show for the first time. I wonder what they think about it. Quite like to speak to someone in their 20s and see what they think about Friends.
Yeah, we should do that, actually.
What were your other favourite shows and films from the 90s then, Grace, that you remember?
I don't know if they're from the 90s, okay? They might be from the 2000s, but I really liked Charmed, which was the story of 3 sisters who were witches. I used to watch 2 episodes of that every day when I got home from school. Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Loved it. Salem the Cat.
That's his name. Yeah, so good. And then, I also, you've put Buffy the Vampire Slayer as one of yours. I also watched that.
I was obsessed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer to the point where
technically you shouldn't watch it anymore though, Soph, because of the whole element of
it wasn't an actor. I think it was the producer's been done for bullying or the director or something.
Yeah.
But to the point, I'm going to admit this. I might really regret this.
Did you have a crush on what's his name?
Grace, what was your very first email address?
I think it was gracieac83@hotmail.com.
That's not nearly embarrassing enough.
What was yours?
Mine was angelsdeathhole@yahoo.com. Just obsessed with Buffy.
That is brilliant. That is so good. I think I had a friend at school, Phoebe was her name, who was really obsessed with Buffy, and I watched it a little bit with her, but it wasn't my go-to, if I'm honest.
Oh, I loved Buffy. Also, film-wise, the Titanic. I remember going to see the Titanic in the cinema, and I was underage, and it was at 12. So
yes, again, I also watched the Titanic at Phoebe's house.
Oh,
Phoebe. And I remember being quite terrified by it, and I know that my parents had asked me not to watch it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I also loved Romeo and Juliet with I think I spent the whole of the 90s just being obsessed and in love with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
There we go. What else?
Favourite bands?
Oh, so obviously I think the biggest band to dominate the 90s was probably the Spice Girls.
Yeah.
Were you a Spice Girls fan?
Of course.
Okay. I was going to try and guess who your favourite Spice Girl was.
Well, go on then. I think it's quite obvious. I've actually
if I guess Posh Spice, I feel like you'd be offended, but she was like the fashiony one.
No, I was Sporty Spice. I was a real tomboy. So I might put this on the Two's Company Instagram, but I have some incredible footage of me in my Sporty Spice outfit, crop top and track pants, doing a dance routine with my friends where I basically don't let them have any camera time. And it's all about me. And I can't remember what song we're dancing to, one of the Spice Girls' biggest hits. And it's like little Grace in front of the camera doing all the Sporty Spice moves. I'd imagine you were also Sporty Spice.
I was also Sporty Spice. The foundation of our relationship.
I still remember all of my friends being incredibly envious of this one crop top that I had that was leopard print that I used to wear to all of the parties. Yeah. Johnny
asked me yesterday, what do we have now that we didn't have then? And he was like, so you wouldn't have had podcasts. And I was like, what was the alternative? And it made me remember the internet when you wanted to use the dial-up, only the late in the 90s that we actually got the internet. But yeah, that you had to actually like unplug the phone wire and plug in the phone wire. And then when your mum wanted to use the phone, you had to like get off the internet, I want to use the phone. You had to actually unplug the phone line, plug in the internet.
Yeah.
Like, vice versa.
Well, that's when with the You've Got Mail jingle thing, that's what we tried to find to sample for this podcast. But I also, was MSN 90s or was that 2000s?
I think that's 2000s, my friend.
Okay, that was very much
I wrote
part
down
of my
Y2K
life.
here, and Grace said, what's Y2K? But you now have remembered.
The year 2000.
Yeah.
I do remember that very well. We were at a sort of family and kids party at some family friends of ours doing like lots of silly games. And that's what I remember.
Something else that was quite 90s, Tony Blair. Met him, shook his hand. I was wearing an orange puffer jacket at the time. I have a photo. I remember it well.
Tony Blair and his big ears. The only Labour politician to actually be okay and do anything worthwhile.
Also might have caused a war in okay, we won't go into that right now.
Yeah, sorry, what I meant by that was when I was prepping for the bit on local elections, and Labour did like absolutely catastrophically, I was reading some piece that was saying that, you have to go back as far as Tony Blair to actually have a Labour leader that kind of managed to unite. I don't know, just anyway. Cut this bit. Load of bollocks.
Should we, do you want to reminisce any more over my red hair mascara and my Tamagotchi and my rollerblades? Or should we just
also Savage Garden. Truly madly
How about
deeply.
Listeners, slide into our DMs with some of your favourite 90s things and we'll just have a really good time remembering.
My friend Tiggy just messaged me about those wrist slap things.
Slap bands.
Slap bands.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and slinkies and what were we talking about before? The
Diabolos. I don't know if they were 90s or...
My absolute favourite as well, DC skate shoes and anything from Quicksilver for me in terms of fashion.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Vagina, vulva,
Labia,
clitoris, notorious, VAG, vagina facts.
So this week on Vagina Facts, I'm going to let Sophie take the floor. Mainly, we've spoken a lot about vaginas already on today's episode, and also because when I read yours, I just thought, yeah, that'll do. That's quite a cool fact. Can't be bothered. So here you go. Go on, Soph.
My fact is about the link between vaginas and sharks. And while you wouldn't normally compare your vagina to jaws...
Sorry, but one sec. Look how I'm sitting. I need to move. I'm stuck.
You can move. I give you permission. Interrupting my vagina fact. Okay. Although we did talk about vaginas with teeth in a previous episode, it is not a real condition. But your lady parts have more in common with sharks than you realise. So... have you heard of squalene or squalane? It's
mainly because you talk about it on Instagram all the time.
Yes, it's used in loads of cosmetic products like moisturisers. And squalene, with an E, is a compound that's actually found in the livers of sharks. And I use squalane with an A, which is the vegan version, which is made from sugarcane. Well, believe it or not, but the old vag also produces squalene. So basically, when you're turned on, squalene is secreted to allow your clit and labia to swell up and prepare the body for sex. So it's basically like a lube. So there we have it. Get turned on and rub your squalene on your face, if you please. I think I shall be...
Sophie, no!
I shall be sticking to the
My
vegan
dad
version.
listens to these podcasts, and sometimes he messages me saying, really enjoyed the podcast this week. Less about discharge, please. And you've just basically said, rub your vagina juices on your face.
Just to clarify, that's a joke. Please don't. Please don't use squalene at all. I don't want you killing sharks.
This
use the
episode
vegan version.
has just been so ridiculous. Things we disagree on.
Agree to disagree. Things we disagree on. Agree to disagree. Things we disagree on. Okay, Grace texted me yesterday saying, have you read this article by Camilla Long? And I said, no, I hate Camilla Long.
And I said, I love Camilla Long.
She's a journalist for The Times.
Camilla Long is a journalist for The Times and also probably other publications, but I regularly just see her in The Times. I know that Sophie will have many thoughts. The only reason I said I really like her is because I just quite like it when people are like a bit polemical and a bit annoying and a bit different. And I appreciate reading... it's like Jeremy Clarkson. I fundamentally don't agree with the person that he is, but he writes very humorously, and I enjoy reading a different opinion.
Grace doesn't know what's coming up, so I'm looking forward to seeing her reaction. So a few years ago, I spoke out publicly about surfing being so hypersexualized, and I said that, I've been a part of this culture for a long time, but I finally felt able to speak out about it and say how I really felt. And I just said, I felt it was really inappropriate and that it perpetuated everyday sexism and, it's part of a much wider cultural problem. And within that discussion somewhere, I said that I preferred to surf in wetsuits. And somehow this caused a media storm, most of which was offensive, willfully uninformed and extremely toxic. And one of the journalists, I'm doing little inverted comma things,
air quotes,
who wrote about me was Camilla Long for The Times. I'm going to read it out and let you decide what you think about her tone.
Okay, go on. Don't worry, I have my comeback already.
Feminist dilemma of the week obeys the usual algorithm. Should women, insert profession that isn't interesting without nudity, be made to cover up and get better jobs. It's happened to darts girls, page 3 girls, strippers and escorts. Now it's female surfers. I'm fairly sure that female surfing is just as unwatchable as male surfing, no matter how naked one is. But surfer Sophie Hellyer has complained that unless she wore a bikini, no one was interested. She got a lot less coverage in the media now she was wearing a wetsuit. She hardly ever wears impractical bikinis now, as they are items of clothing that come down. And they also meant she'd slip off the board from sun cream, cut herself on reefs and get sunburn or wax rash. I think this is a rash you get after receiving a Brazilian. I've written about the trivialising of the feminist debate, but even by recent standards, beers for ladies and pens for ladies, both twice the price of the male version, this is a big old trough of gold-plated bollocks. It is an unpleasant fact of life that hot blonde women look better in bikinis than they do in wetsuits, and that every bit of past sponsorship Hellyer's garnered will have been off the back of her looking gorgeous with a six-pack. I don't like it, and maybe you don't either, but I wish we'd stop clogging the airways with this I'm so hot moaning. I just have to say, where's the journalistic integrity or merit in a piece like that? And I also just glanced at the article that's below that she wrote, just to give you a bit more of Camilla Long's generally bitchy tone. Meghan Markle. Who's dressing Meghan Markle? In Northern Ireland on Friday, she wore clothes that belonged to an old lady, spindly legs shoved into big cloppy heels, a tiny granny bag and bird nest hair. She was propelled around the crowds by a handsome young carer, Prince Harry. Maybe the Queen had taken one look at her stripper heels and decided to de-slut her, ... So I just don't like her tone, and I think at a time where, like, journalistic integrity is really in the news, like that whole Martin Bashir thing, I just think, yeah, I haven't got any time for the way she writes and her tone and her opinions.
I'm not negating what you've just said, and I'm not, I'm not saying I like Camilla Long because she was really mean to you. I obviously don't condone that because you're my friend. I just think that it's very rare to read anything these days that isn't. Firstly, I think it's quite brave to put your opinion out there on the internet like she does. I secondly also think that maybe it's never actually her opinion, and she's basically built a career on being really difficult and having really left field views. And I think that, yeah, like I said, if it was an article about you, then I'm on your side. But generally speaking, I like reading something that is amusing to the point of making me actually think about something a little bit differently. Like, she really made me think differently about the Martin Bashir case, and I hadn't considered the other side. I'm not saying I agree with the other side, but I think it's really good to still publish things that people think. We can't just cancel everyone. We can't cancel everything. I agree with you in the feminist sense that everything you're saying is right and everything she says in that piece is ultimately wrong, but it doesn't mean that I don't enjoy understanding and reading it and thinking about it.
But my question would be, if you're just writing opinion pieces, are you a journalist, or like opinion pieces aren't journalism? Anyway,
well, I don't know about
we'll
that.
Agree to disagree on.
But her pieces are comment. They're not her. It's always like comment section. It's like, here's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it.
I did slide in her DMs back in 2018 and ask her to apologise, and she never did.
Oh. Well, that isn't very nice.
Send us an email if you're a really cool female. Ooh, you're such a cool female. Send us a letter to make us feel better. You make us feel better. Time for the mailbag. Time for the mailbag.
Actually, that segues quite nicely into the mailbag, because one of the first questions was, how does your friendship survive all the things that you disagree on? And I think I just let Sophie win all the time. No, I'm joking. What would you say, So? We're quite good at arguing, but then putting stuff to bed, I think.
So I think I have quite a few friends that politically we really disagree. I've got friends who vote for Trump, and I have a lot of friends who I disagree on many matters with, but for some reason we just still get on really well. And I think it's just an energetic thing. I think that you and I, it doesn't matter if we don't agree on politics or journalism or lots of other things, because when we hang out, we have fun. We like our energy matches well, and we do fun stuff together. And I just think that's the point, is like, my friendships are like play. It's like being a kid.
Yeah.
We go swimming and chat and drink tea, and it's just...
I think it's important. I think look, we obviously disagree on a lot of things, but fundamentally, I think Camilla Long aside, and whether journalism is commentary, whatever, the really fundamental things that build a friendship and sustain a lifetime with someone, we do agree on. We treat each other the same in our friendship. We have a lot of respect for one another. And I've always said about you that you are someone that is fiercely opinionated. I'm actually not that opinionated. This podcast makes me more so, because I know that you're going to come at me with all of your like radical feminist, sometimes very left-wing views, and I have to sort of counter them and, create debate and all that stuff. But actually, I've always said to Nick that what I really respect about you is that you have strong opinions, but you don't discredit others for the opinions that they have. Like you're never not going to be friends with me because I grew up in quite a privileged middle class family.
I'm not.
You're not going to hold
friends
that
with Johnny because he's meat.
Yeah, you're not going to hold that against me in the same way that I wouldn't hold some stuff against you when you attack me about eating fish.
And I also think it's really important to have friends with different opinions, because you don't want to live in an echo chamber, and my opinions change over time and I learn new things, and maybe I'll learn something from you, maybe you learn something from me, maybe our opinions will change, maybe they won't.
Yeah, and ultimately sometimes we do try to change each other's opinions about things like Oatly, and either you just get on board with it or you don't, and in this case
sips tea with Oatly.
Exactly. So we're still friends, it's fine.
In the mailbag, I'm going to read this letter out.
Okay.
I say letter, it's a DM, but letter sounds cooler.
Is this the one about...
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Hello. So just to preface this, in the last episode, we talked about vaginas healing quickly. And I said, well, what injury could a vagina get? Hello, Sophie and Grace. I just had to stop mid-dog walk whilst listening to you guys to send this message when you asked, what kind of injuries does a vagina get? Well, I once skewered my flower. My dog escaped the garden. I jumped over the fence to follow. However, I did not check my landing zone.
Hold on. If you're squeamish, fast forward 20 seconds.
Yeah. Turned out I managed to land directly onto a rusty old fence post. And yes, directly onto it. Like it literally went inside me. I was rushed to hospital. I bled through about 6 bath towels, and it was quite literally a bloody nightmare. But I was absolutely flabbergasted at how quickly it healed. Within a week, it was fully back up and running. And I've written, holy moly. And she said, hang on, I didn't mention before, but it happened after my niece's christening, where there happened to be a free bar. Fortunately, the buckets of Prosecco I drank meant I didn't really feel much, but the embarrassment of having to run across my in-laws' garden in front of the whole family, cupping my bleeding crotch, and then having to let my father-in-law have a look will scar for life. Oh, and what's even worse is that my wife and I had just started IVF, and I had to go for an internal scan a week after and explain to the poor nurse what happened.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that must just be one in a lots of million.
Anyway,
woman.
I asked this girl if I could share her story, and she said it would be my pleasure if you shared my mingery story. And she actually has a highlight on her Instagram feed with her vag trauma. So if anyone wants to check that out, it's Sophie89 UK.
Oh, I just don't think my dad can listen to this episode. I'm going to have to tell him to miss it. Oh, my word.
Okay, so there's another question in the mailbag that I'm going to ask Grace's dad and my mother to stop the podcast.
Okay, what's the question? What's the question?
She says, a girlfriend brought this up with me and I'm mind blown. Do you stand up or sit down to wipe after a poo?
What? Sorry?
What do you do?
Sit down.
I do a bit of both. I sit down and then I finish up by standing up.
Wow. Each to their own,
Probably
I guess.
depends how healthy your bowel movements are, I imagine.
Yeah. But, I mean, if we look at, our ancestors, we all would have squatted to go to the loo, so...
So the tone of our mailbag...
Oh, dear.
Listeners.
This podcast has descended from actually quite erudite, news, current affairs and pop culture to a sordid pile of piss and poo and vagina blood.
There was one other message in the mailbox. It was a steam mop public service announcement. Firstly, if you don't know how great steam mops are, they are fantastic. Secondly, one listener wrote in to say how great it is when you put essential oils into your steam mop, and that I should tell everyone who listens to the podcast to do it. But no, Do not put essential oils into your steam mop. It will clog it up. And actually, you should put them directly onto the floor and then just push them around with the steam mop.
Does it make you sad at all that your whole goal on social media was to be like a quite outspoken feminist who talks about women's rights and surfing and inspire people to get into cold water and, you know, do all these TED Talks, and actually absolute clanger from Sophie on a Zoom call the other day to a PR person? She said, yeah, I've been in all the newspapers. But that actually what you end up doing on Instagram is influencing people to either buy Crocs or steam mops.
Life of an influencer, babe. I think that rounds up this episode quite nicely. I don't normally do the outro, but
We've done the intro and the outro today.
If you like our podcast, please.
I was about to say you hadn't made too many diction mistakes today. But...
Anyway, if you like our podcast, please do give us 5 stars, give us a review, share us with your mates. Probably don't let your mum listen.
Oh. And yeah, basically, we want to make the podcast really good. Bye-bye.
Two's company, two's company, two's company, two's company, two's company, two's company.
But not 3, that's too much company.
Nailed it.